people are endeavoring to make themselves, or to establish themselves as an authority or to be special. And when we meet people, what I know that when I meet people and I offer them the opportunity to take the superior role when I'm talking to them, psychologically, verbally, even the way I hold myself, then normally they respond in a very positive way. As if when I'm talking to them, I put them on a vyasasana, and I take the role of a student. They like that better. Everybody does, practically. It's pretty common in the world. And as far as follow-up goes, thinking about the general principle, from what I've heard, Anakandun Dubey Prabhu told us a few years ago, when he did a lot of follow-up. The more personal, the better. Because although there's an idea that if I just send out an email to 1,000 people, 2% will respond and then we'll go from there. It's actually, when there's a personal contact, that's when people develop trust that there's something valuable, because they actually trust you and they appreciate you as a person. That's what really keeps people alive in Krishna consciousness long enough for them to be able to start practicing themselves as they trust somebody. They met somebody that they've felt the qualities of a saintly person in, and because of that, what other kind of challenges they may have in taking up Krishna consciousness, like the negative opinions of relatives or friends or their own minds, that can be overcome because they met somebody that was positive and that was very trustworthy and had good qualities. And now I'll just take a few reflections or questions. Yes, people?
You got the microphone here? I like what you said about imagine that everyone has a sign around their neck that says, "Make me feel special," because actually everyone is special being part of Krishna. And my own experience of that is people really reciprocate with how you treat them. If you treat them with respect and with care and love, they will treat you the same way back, and they'll take the books and they'll be really happy about the interaction. And then when you contact them later, they're really excited to hear from you, and they want to respond and stay in contact.
Thank you for verifying that. You experiment, those of you who have experimented extensively in the field will know that. That's what people respond to. I also suggest that it's a way of life. And it's not just for when we go out, but it's also for when we're inside. It's developing a way to respect others. In whatever position in a hierarchy in the organization or in your family, of course, appropriate respect. But by doing so, you'll find that the reciprocation is much greater and deeper for people. Respect. What else? Any other things? Yes. Prema.
Hare Krishna. Can you explain how you put people in a position that they feel they're superior than you? I mean, you have experience, some kind of specialization, how to do that. One by one in Sankirtan, or when you preach to them.
Well, as an example, when we were just in Ahmedabad a couple of weeks ago, I would tell people that you know more than I do. And they appreciated that. I just tell them straightforwardly that, well, you know more about this than I do. They go, oh, of course I do. And I said, and your mother, like I'd say, your mother, she read the Bhagavad Gita and your grandmother memorized it. And they go, yeah. And I say, you know more about this than I do. You already know this. Just those mantras, telling people, you know more about this than I do. And when I'm talking to Western audiences, I ask them, I say, you look spiritual. I tell people they look spiritual. And there's an interesting effect I've noticed. Like yesterday, somebody had seen me at the Mongol Arctic, and later they came up to me and they said, hey, you look tired. And then the rest of the day I felt tired. And if somebody comes up to you and says, you know, you look horrible. You look like a slob, then you know, it's like, God, I need some new clothes. Or something. And if somebody comes up to you and says, you look great, you know, the rest of the day you'll be going like, hey, I feel great, you know. And if somebody says to you, now this is something I just stumbled upon, but it's instant self-realization. When you come up to somebody and say, you look spiritual, it short-circuits their false ego, and all of a sudden they become self-realized. It's amazing, because you say, you look spiritual, and they go, oh, oh my God. Then the soul remembers, I am spiritual. I'm not this body. I'm actually part and parcel of the Supreme. And for an instant, because they were already thinking it in the womb, you know, from Kapila Dev, and now you tell them that, they go, you look spiritual, and then you say, what's your secret? And then they'll tell you. That's a kind of way of putting myself in a subordinate position, because I'm saying to them, you teach me now. How did you get so spiritual? And then when they tell me something, they'll say, you know, like I have a pet rabbit or something like that. And I take really good care of it, and he calms me down and everything. I'm like, wow, that is really amazing. And then our relationship changes, because now I'm respecting them. I'm respecting their spirituality, which is completely in line with our teachings. For instance, in the Sri Upanishad, Yastu sarvani bhutani atmani anupashyati. Anupashyati means you should systematically cultivate this kind of vision with every living entity that you meet. That, listen, you're special. You should see that they're actually part and parcel of Krishna. Anupashyati means systematically cultivate that in each person. And if I focus on that when I'm meeting people, there's an uncanny change. It changes from trying to think of what to say to actually a heart-to-heart communication, or a soul-to-soul communication with people, which is where you want to live all the time. And as I say, it's not just with going out on Sankirtan, because it's a way of life. It's a way of actually living in the soul and appreciating the fact that other living entities are amazing, whoever they are. I mean, even if it's like a little lizard jumped on me the other day. The smallest little thing, he just jumped out of I don't know where he jumped out of, the ceiling or something. I was like, where'd you come from? And, you know, you look around the world and it's all amazing. And so that's the kind of points that I make to people. Just appreciate the amazing qualities they already have, and they've just forgotten about. What else?
Questions?
Yes.
We need a mic here.
Do you ever feel any day you're down or you don't really want to act in such a spirit?
Do you ever feel?
Like you're not to act in such a spirit.
Do you hear what she
You ever
said?
feel down?
Do I ever feel down?
It's
Constantly.
difficult to act in such a spirit that you're describing.
Yeah, all the time. I mean, almost exclusively. It's always a battle. You know, we're in the middle of a material ocean, and therefore you have to manage your expectations, because you take the spiritual life doesn't mean you're going to be in ecstasy every minute, but it does mean that you know how to right yourself. You have the wherewithal to do that. And that kind of gives a sense of freedom, when you know, no matter how much the modes affect you, that you know the system to get out of it. Like one of the ways I know to get out of it is to chant good rounds, or to chant a chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Last night, a few of us sat in our room and we chanted a chapter of Bhagavad Gita, because it had been a little bit of a topsy-turvy day for me. So, right, you chanted a chapter of Gita, And then I said, okay, I feel much better now. So you have to, it's a constant battle with material energy while we're here, so you have to fight the righteous fight. Be ready to fight every day and don't think you're going to coast. Because as soon as you start coasting, then the modes will drag you down. So be a warrior.
Okay, microphone
Okay.
here. Nagar first in the front.
Nagar in the front.
Then Blake.
Blake.
Okay.
Blake first.
Hare Krishna. So when I was traveling with Brajananda Prabhu, I found that trying to do follow-up was difficult because of time constraints. So how should we manage our time? How much should we put into follow-up? How much should we put into being out doing books when we're doing full-time traveling Sankirtan?
The more energy you put into conceiving of an effective follow-up system, which would be a multiple-pronged approach, the more you'll be able to economize your time. For instance, if you have a drip system that works, means that when you meet people and you collect their names, if you have a reliable way of keeping in touch with them through postcards, which I recommend over email, because people actually look at them when they come through their door, and you personalize it, and it goes out at a regular basis, then it'll be more effective. And then if you think about ways to have a system so that you have step 1, step 2, step 3, it's like a funnel that you sort people out and see how interested they are. It becomes more efficient. But that itself takes a long time to conceive of and to develop, but in the long run it's worth it, so that you're not randomly trying to follow up with people, because that could take a lot of time. So try to become more efficient. Look at what big companies do when they try to become more efficient. They find all the places where there's extra time being wasted, or places where they could cut down on waste, and then they tighten it up over time. Okay, Nagar, and I'll just take a couple more. Then I probably should go.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Regarding asking people what's their secret, sometimes you get a lot of really interesting answers. Sometimes a lot of really crazy answers, to be frank. And like they'll say,
It's no problem.
I just get wasted on weekends, or I do all the drugs or whatever it is, and then that's why I'm so spiritual. And in fact, I suggest to you, because you don't seem very spiritually advanced yourself, or something along those lines. They start to kind of preach to you because you're putting them on the vyasasana of some completely bogus thing. I usually just try to say, okay, there you go. But maybe, do you have a better way to respond to that?
Out of 20 times you approach people to say that, how many times do they do that? They try to preach to you and say you should be more like me.
Well, in Boulder, it's pretty common.
I'm asking how many times out of 20?
Out of 20 in that specific scenario where they tell you should do this?
Specific scenario.
Maybe one.
Okay, that's all right. If it's 1 out of 20 on any given incident, it's an aberration. You don't have to worry about, just let it go. If it happens once every three times, then you have to start planning for it. Otherwise, there's all kinds of aberrations you can come up with. You'll mention them to the Vina and say, what if this happens? What if that happens? They say it's 1 out of 100. What do you care? It doesn't really matter. Worry about that later. Get the basics down now. Deal with the aberrations later. But I noticed in all the seminars that people always think of the aberrations first, because that's the first thing on their mind, What if like a full-grown mountain gorilla comes after me? How many are there? So, well, once a zoo they broke out of the zoo. It was 200 years ago. I was like, well, you don't have to worry about it right now.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Krishna. I would like to know, we're all in different places of the world, but the scenarios are kind of similar. There's so many activities that go on in the temple, and somehow it seems like Bhakti Sibhushan is not anymore on the top of the priority list, for whatever reason, historically. And so, my question is, how do you prioritize your life, and how do you strategize in order to actually get the books out? Because there's so many other types of devotional service that one can do, personally or in a temple, collectively. There's so many festivals, so many events, and somehow the books seem to be conspicuously absent, for the most part. So how do you prioritize, and how do you make ISV, Mountain View, Iskon Silicon Valley, the #1 contributor to the BBT in North America, with 0 resident devotees?
Well, we have one now. Actually, I was lucky because we started from scratch, so that helps. If you start, with layers of generations, then with people with different opinions, then it can be a different situation. But we have to, when we're dealing with book distribution or any other kind of project, whatever it is, you have to be teaching not just to the people that you're distributing books to, but also internally. It's the same in any company. If you're in marketing, you have to preach about marketing, because the people in the accounting department will start saying, accounting is the only way. It's the most important of all the departments. And everybody will take this role. It's what's called bounded rationality in management, that people within their own department think that they're supreme. And that's what living entities naturally do. If you divide people up into groups in this room, and you say, okay, you're red team, you're green team, you're blue and yellow, everyone in their own group's going, yeah, we're the best. And it only takes 10 seconds. So first of all, you realize it's a natural phenomenon that human beings, they get competitive, because it comes from the spiritual world. Spiritual world, there's ganas, or groups of people, and there's a rasa where they compete against each other, so it's transferred here to the material world. So it's not altogether foreign. It's actually a real thing that's going on. So just now I'm going to the GBC meeting, I'm on my way there, and I'm going to give an hour-and-a-half presentation to the plenary body of the GBC about the importance of book distribution. A lot of the things I'm going to say today are what I said last year, the year before, and the year before that. But does everyone need to hear it? Yeah, because they're really busy dealing with heavy issues, and if they don't hear regularly, if anybody doesn't hear regularly about something, then somebody else will take their attention. So there's an old saying that I got from Guy Kawasaki, one of the founders of the Apple Corporation. He said, frame or be framed. Unless you frame the reality that you want to see, someone else will frame it for you and say, no, it's like this. And people do it all the time. So you have to be very clear about what reality is. That's why I wrote a book about it. Because I said, this is what I say it's about. So I have the right to do that, and to write it down. $9.99. No, just available now on Amazon. That's framing something. Somebody else can write a book and say, Prabhupada wasn't into book distribution, he really wanted Harinam, and main thing is stay home, work with the deities, book distributions, it's a lost art, forget about it. That's a frame, so you reframe it. So you have to constantly reframe your own life, and if you want to get anything done with other people, you have to help them reframe it too. It's another kind of Sankirtan. It's actually one of the most important types of book distribution, is teaching your congregation and your leaders and working with them in such a way to encourage them to accommodate book distribution in a big way. One of the most important aspects is seminars like these that Navina Nirana Prabhu is putting on, and his example all over the world, to show people how to live a life fully dedicated to not only distributing books, but to reading them also. So I feel a great debt of gratitude to step into this classroom, this august assembly. I think you're very fortunate to have time with Navina. I keep hearing everywhere I go people talking about the seminar that's taking place here, and it's really a power center. So please keep up the good work. Dedicate yourselves to this spreading of knowledge, distinguishing reality from illusion for the welfare of all. And Krishna will bring so many blessings to your life, you won't know what to do with them all. You'll just be sitting there trying to figure out what to do with all the blessings. You'll have to hire some manager to help you count them all and see where to put them. Does that sound okay? Yes. Not very good.
Yeah. Thank you very much for
Okay, don't everybody leave, okay, you guys, stay back, don't go. Alright, we got some more friends who showed up, so thank you all for joining us. For today, the fourth day on book distribution, Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnana Kaya Chakshurvijnana Tasmai Gurve Namaha Sichidananda Visnavasthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupanayana Vishvapadantikam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Shri Guru Vinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Vanchakalpatarudhischa Kripasindhyevacha Are we online? Okay. Well, for all our friends online, you just missed the most fantastic speech by Rasheshika Prabhu. It was just half an hour, so much for not coming down here and hearing it in person. But what can you do? Such is life. Thanks for joining us. We have a few more friends who showed up. Devamata Prabhu from Michigan, Silanti. Haribo. Thank you. Another friend from Argentina. So, as I mentioned earlier, today we kind of put the student handbook aside and we're going to focus on follow-up, making devotees, and not unmaking devotees, which means keeping devotees blissful and alive. Did you like his speech?
Yes.
Presentation? You saw the clarity, you saw the how much he's in tune with that internal potency. Would you like to become like that?
Yes.
Okay, it's very easy, 40 years of book distribution. It's very simple. You just got to put in the time, the effort, and you'll all be there. I guarantee you that. Or else money back guarantee from this seminar. Okay. So, the student handbook is just a help to remind you a few things, a few exercises, a few pointers, but we're not going to hash it out and go like page by page and read every sentence and put it up and have you read it, because that's kind of third grade stuff. This is just a gift to you as an inspiration to get you thinking along the way. What I really like to do today is to hear from a few devotees who have experience and realization in the topic of how to attract people, how to engage them, and how to keep them engaged. Because honestly speaking, I feel this is the area where there is the most need. We're lacking not so much in the department of putting the books out there, because books are going out, 10 million books every year. It's a good start, as they say. But if we look at what is our harvest, how much do we actually capitalize, how much do we actually gain and benefit from this book distribution, it's really minimal. We're really getting very minimal results from that. And that has different components, how to improve it. So I would like to hear, first of all, from Devamata Prabhu himself, what are his realizations on the topic. And then we have also a dear friend, Anakudundapi Prabhu, who's going to explain his program. He has dedicated himself to follow up, and he does book distribution along with it. So, but I'd like to hear from Devamata Prabhu. Can you come up here for a few minutes and you can ask any questions? Any question you like. He's used to it.
This is is one of the old Sankirtan techniques where they tell you one thing and then you do another. I thought I was coming to here, but thank you.
You can sit, you can stand, you can jump around as you like.
Hare Krishna. I'm humbled because many of my hearers are in the room. I was hoping to hear something, but I'll just get it out of the way, say something. There's a phenomena happening in athletics right now, and that was kind of my background before I went to devotees. I played a lot of sports. And there's something happening in athletics right now where people are going from being systems coaches to being what's called a player's coach. And in America there's this game called football, not soccer, but football, very popular. Yeah, but where they throw the ball. And they don't kick it, although it's called football. It's very American. And the most famous coach in college football right now became the perennial championship winner when he stopped forcing players to do what he wanted them to do according to the system that he developed previously. And he started looking at, well, who are the players that have come to me, and what would be the best program, what would be the best way to implement their particular skills and talents. And as soon as he shifted his approach, that's when his team started going from a kind of a above average to the perennial winner, championship team every time. And it's when he went from being a systems coach to a player's coach. And this is what I see in the programs that are successful, especially in the West, where people are hypersensitive to any kind of dogma, as they like to call it, or any kind of impersonal idea of what their life should be about. If we haven't considered them as an individual yet, they won't listen to anything that we have to say. And so the same way we preach to ourselves, Shravanam Kirtanam, is the way that we should approach a relationship with them. Before Kirtanam, before explaining what it is that you would like them to do, you have to be very attuned to what it is they will be able to do. And that comes through powerful Shravanam. And I think Vaisheshekar Guru, he already helped us all see this, but maybe I can just frame it in that kind of Shastric way that we're familiar with. Once you know how that person understands themselves to be special, once you know how that person feels like they're already making a contribution to Krishna's world, even if they don't call it Krishna's world yet, then you can help them fan that spark. And if you try to approach guiding them before you've recognized what they already value about themselves, then you're actually going to dampen that spark. You're going to put out the flame that's already growing. That's been my experience. So to come from a place of Shravanam in our relationships with people and hear from them what it is they want to contribute, what it is they feel is special and unique about the persona that they've developed, that's what allows us to have powerful experiences in engaging them. Because then they feel like they've been heard, they feel edified in their previous efforts, and they feel like they can make a contribution within our community, and they're not going to lose that sense of who they are that they've already developed. Because it's not black and white, it's not that we flip a light switch and we become Krishna conscious. All of us know that it's a process, it's something that's evolving, and all of us would actually, I'm sure, say that we were becoming Krishna conscious before we met someone else who was explicitly Krishna conscious. Can anybody else agree with that statement?
Yeah.
You were becoming Krishna conscious before you met the devotees. Right? So it's not that we're giving people Krishna consciousness, but we're giving them the opportunity to deepen that relationship. And recognizing what is the nature of that relationship that they've already begun to develop comes through Shravanam. I'll end there. And
Questions?
any questions?
Concerns?
I've noticed the same thing with what you had spoken, but it's really interesting, this phenomenon that you were speaking of, this player's coach. I had no idea about this. Very interesting. One question I have, because I've seen devotees who cultivate millennials, that they will listen to whatever these people have to say, even if it's even if it's like, I remember at this one program, this boy, he just wanted to talk about Shiva Lingams for like any opportunity he could. He started talking about Shiva Lingams. And the person who was facilitating the program just smiled and nodded her head, and she said, "Okay, now we're going to." She wouldn't get too much into what he was talking about, but she'd acknowledge his contribution, and then she would go on to the next thing in the program. And it was not like I really felt she had no malice in her heart that he was talking, because I was thinking like, what is this guy talking about lingams all the time? It's like,
and why is she tolerating it, right?
Well, I appreciated it, but I know my knee-jerk reaction was kind of like, I was about to just be like, hey man, like chill out on this lingam talk. I was wondering, maybe you could just share some of your own realizations in this, and your own experience in this regard of being able to hear people out and respect, like what you just said, respect and acknowledge their development, their previous development, which is leading them to Krishna consciousness, even if it's kind of like a little strange.
Got it. Thank you, Raj. Anybody else relate to that or had to experience that? There's this kind of off the wall or misdirected, misguided, whether it's individually or within a program, that you have to hear things that don't seem on topic, so to speak. What was coming to mind actually is oftentimes the way that we relate to people is coming from the example of Srila Prabhupada. We're naturally so, and rightly so. And sometimes I'm worried that we look at what Srila Prabhupada did before we look at why he did it. And if we just reduce Srila Prabhupada's example to a set of practices, then ironically what we'll wind up doing is disenfranchising the purpose he was trying to serve by doing certain things. So Prabhupada used the military analogy a lot, and I'll use that to answer your question. When Srila Prabhupada came in the first initial push of the movement, when book distribution in its kind of rawest form out there on the streets, Sankirtan, one-to-one, stranger to brahmachari basically, when that was going on, and that was what practically everyone was doing, or at least trying to support, that was the initial push of the military effort, kind of like the storming of the beach at Normandy. Does anybody know the storming of the beach at Normandy? That example, World War II, the Allies need to establish a front against the Germans. No offense to any of the Germans in the room. And they did that by going all out, sending everybody, whether you were a lieutenant, whether you were a private, whether you were a colonel, whoever you were, everybody had to push. And many people lost their lives, and there was a deep sense of urgency in that push. But what happened was, the beachfront was established. There was some ground that was gained. And from gaining that ground, then the other strategic efforts of the military could be implemented. Then the spies could do their work. Then the community relations people, because that's a part of war too, is winning over the hearts and minds of the people that you're conquering. That group could begin to do their work. All the other levels of the infantry could start to exact out their specialization because of that initial push of everybody. So because of the great sacrifice and initial push and urgency of those devotees in the early years of our movement when Prabhupada first came, because of that sacrifice, we all have the great opportunity now to be a little more patient. We don't have to be so desperately urgent to establish ourselves, to make that person listen to what I have to say, because Srila Prabhupada and his followers in the early days already did that for us. So now we have the luxury of patience because of the urgency of Srila Prabhupada and his followers, and it's up to each individual person according to circumstance to really vet, to really understand, is this person somebody to listen to right now or not? Because if I'm on the street and he wants to tell me about some essential oil business that he's gotten into, then I'm not going to give him the time of day. I'll calmly and peacefully back out of the conversation and move on. But if I'm in a program of 20 people and those people are Western and they're hypersensitive to any kind of religious authoritarianism, and I'm very dismissive of that person from the beginning of their sharing whatever their heart's feeling is about Shiva Lingams or butterflies or rainbows or anything else, then as soon as I dismiss that person's heartfelt feelings, everyone else in the room concludes that this is just another authoritarian, religious, so-called leader who's trying to bring me into the fold to exploit and abuse me, and I'm not going to have any part of that. So just the essential point, because of Srila Prabhupada and his early followers' sense of urgency, we now have the luxury, the opportunity to be much more patient in our dealings. And it's a slight to the sacrifice of those devotees if we aren't, in my experience.
Thank you for that. As a follow-up question on this point, no, I got it. I'm hoping. So, sometimes this is taken as an excuse to say, okay, now the push is not anymore required, so we don't really have to go and get the books. Enough books have been out there. And formally, we pushed so many books, but we haven't done it in a good way. And that's why now no one's here in the temple. So basically we're discrediting the push and the sacrifice of the previous generations. We're not doing the push nor the follow-up. We're just giving lame excuses. So it can be a little disheartening sometimes when we hear these type of arguments. So how would you balance out the same thing, that the push and the books has to continue, yet at the same time the follow-up also has to go on? To me, it's like a farmer. A farmer doesn't only, broadcast seeds. He also weeds and he also harvests. I mean, he's into the whole thing because he sees the full picture. So, could you qualify your statement for the audience? I know you understand it, but so that people don't think, hey, what's this guy talking about? Is he against book distribution? Is he a demon or a devotee?
Thank you, Ruben. I personally hate the word balance. It's a word I really dislike. Krishna never uses it that I've seen a reference for. Usually what people mean by balance is that they want to offer their cake to Krishna and eat it too. We're not into that, of course.
What's your substitute?
Krishna talks about pearls on a thread. And he's that string. We would never call those pearls balanced. There's something much more fundamental and deep. They're strung. It's like intrinsic. And so it's actually very hard work to face somebody who wants to speak about Shiva Lingams and have the patience and the faith that there's something essential in that person's heart, which is Krishna conscious, and also Krishna sitting there. And I have the capacity to access that. And by the strength of my own faith, to draw out in them more faith in Krishna. I have that ability. That takes a lot of courage compared to somebody who kind of has a script, and I read my script and he didn't take the book, so he's in Maya. He must be a demon. In my experience, it takes a lot more courage to face that person personally and, kind of swat away the silliness until you get to that essential part. And so that's the real yajna of 2019, in my experience. Whether you're doing it on the street corner, which is still worthy and wonderful and something that I enjoy doing tremendously, or you're doing it in your bhakti rickshaw, or your temple, as Vaisheshekar Prabhu said, some of the most important, deity worship. Prasadam distribution, yes, yes, yes. And how are we actually developing our relationship with people so that they have faith in the Shastra? Including yourself. How often are you reading Srila Prabhupada's books? Or are you just sponsoring a few boxes of them once or twice a year? So to have that faith and conviction and be able to patiently walk that line with everyone that you meet, as Vaisheshekar Prabhu said, not that it's something we turn on and off, but it's something that we're doing with everyone according to the kind of adhikar of the person that we're speaking with. That, in my experience, is a much more taxing yajna than reading a script, they take it, they don't, haribol, onto the next door.
Did you get that point that he was making? Did everybody caught it?
One thing I know, Navina Prabhu is expert at speaking to a room of international. He's very sensitive to the different cultural elements of people's concern. And I know I'm not so sensitive, so forgive me if my American approach to things is going over the global heads of most, I don't know. you and Prabhu.
No, I know why I called on you. So we got a lot of hands up here. You already had your trial. I know you're at the mic, but you got to pass it back. Okay, back to Prem and then Chaitanya.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the words. What I do sometimes in regard of what you are talking is I give them, when I'm in Sankirtan, I try to keep like at least 2 or 3 good contacts or introduce to our Bhakti Vriksha. And the other ones I give like a flyer, an invitation for the temple. But I spend more time, as you said, in those people that I feel that they are very open and they want more. And the other one, and I ask them for the WhatsApp. Most of them in Argentina use WhatsApp. So I put them in a list and I send them invitation to come to the Bhakti Vriksha for some festival of food for life. Also invite them. I talk to them about that program that they love to help people distribute food also. So I try to engage in that way. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yes. So hearing what would be their interest and then trying to connect them to in such a way. Prabhupada says, chapter 4, text 11, the first line of the purport, Ye tamam prapadyante, very famous verse, right? The first line of the purport is as memorable. Everyone is looking for Krishna in different aspects of his manifestation. So we should have, by Prabhupada's mercy, we have some aspect that will attract them if we only have the patience to hear what that aspect is and then present that to them. It may not be what attracts us necessarily or completely to Krishna, or especially initially what attracted us to Krishna, but we should be closely listening to hear what would initially attract them. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, I have a question. On this point that you made about not giving up on people, no, even if they come with some Shiva Linga thing, you don't give up on them and try to... where you draw the line? Where you see how much I should insist on this person, if this is just a lost case, maybe just better to finish politely, go to the next person. Where you draw the line?
No, but he made it very clear. On the street, if people start telling you wild stories, you just cut it. You just, on the street, you just say, have a nice day, fantastic. You want the book? No, okay, bye. But if you're in a program with 20 people and one person starts sharing something personal and you cut it, everybody immediately, just cringes and says, this guy's another religious fanatic, another dogmatic guy, and I'm not going to open up. Look how he cut the other guy. So you have to understand what is the different scenarios. On the street, we're trying to give as many books as possible and invite and attract as many books. And sometimes you listen a little bit, but not like, extensively. But if you're in the follow-up department and you try to cultivate people, you have to actually have the patience to hear people out. How much did Prabhupada hear people out? I mean, you remember in the initial days when all these crazy people used to show up at the storefront? And it's not like they would only show up when Prabhupada was lecturing. They showed up at all times of the day. And they were talking like, they were mostly out of their freaking minds on LSD.
All of them.
Just talking wild and crazy stuff. And Prabhupada just said, yeah, it's okay, just keep on chanting. It will go away, Just take more prasad. I have a friend in Slovakia, he says, whenever somebody shows interest, serious interest, I'm ready to spend as much time with them as required till they cave in, till they start practicing. And for him that means, a lot of time. So, depending on how patient you are, how big your heart is, and how much time you have, spend that much time. But if you're on the street and you're doing one-on-one book distribution, that's conquering the Normandy and establishing the beachfront. That is sense of urgency, sense of mission, take the book, give something. If they want to talk, you give them the card and you say, come on Sunday and we'll talk. Right now here, I have a mission. And they should be able to respect that. So you have to know time, place, and circumstance. Don't confuse or mix the two. Otherwise, it becomes a little complicated. So thank you, Deva Madhava Prabhu, for being who you are and doing what you do.
To say something quick to that last question, I appreciate you asking it. And
Can we switch those phones
I'm
off?
glad Navina Prabhu answered it, because I don't like answering those questions, because it's like asking me to be who you are. And this is what will actually strike people out in the world is when we're people. Because they're all living within impersonal designations, which are all just categories. They're written scripts already, algorithms that they're pre-programmed to follow. That's why Amazon knows what product you want to buy as soon as you log on. It's already got it there, front page. Because on the material level, we're all just a computer program. And people are used to that experience only. So we have the computer program of what it means to distribute a book, what it means to preach, what it means to be Krishna conscious, and that's run its course. Now it's time to figure out what it means that I am Krishna conscious and share that with someone else, and be bold in that my Krishna consciousness will look and does look a little different fundamentally from the person sitting next to me and the person at the front of the room and the person on the Vyasasana. And that's not only okay, but that's wanted. Krishna wants that variety. He doesn't want the party line. That's Vaikuntha. He wants the spontaneity coming from your heart, your relationship with him, and he wants you to share that with the other person. That's Sankirtan. Hare Krishna.
As the last point before you take off, what is your motivation? He's creating a community and bringing in all kinds of people from all different demographics and different spectrums of the stratosphere, so to speak. So what is your strategy in doing that? What is the need that you feel that we have today in order to create such a community, and how can all of the devotees here do something similar, irregardless of the ashram and whether they live in a temple or they live at home, or whether they're full-time book distributors or just part-timers? How can people do what you're doing in their own individual way?
Thank you. I'm not doing much. I'm a part of a community in Ypsilanti, Michigan, near the Detroit Temple. We call ourselves the Harmony Collective. And the way I'd like to frame the answer, given our group and our focus today, which is Sankirtan, is our kind of internal motto is that Sankirtan is for keeping devotees. Sankirtan is for keeping devotees. It used to be for making devotees. That was let's go out and make some devotees. But now, in my experience, it's much more satisfying to feel like I'm deepening my relationships with the devotees that I go out on book distribution with, that I go out on Sankirtan with.
So it's your team building exercise.
I go out on, it's the ultimate team building exercise. And it doesn't, just because you join the team doesn't, it's not a light switch on and off. It's a deepening, ever increasing, nava, right? This is prema bhakti that we're talking about. There's always a deeper experience to be had in the relationship. And so for every one devotee you might make off of the street, that same effort to make that one devotee could be put into inspiring the 10 or so devotees in your orbit right now who have, for whatever reason, lost faith or interest. And so here you are in Sridham Mayapur, here you are intelligent enough to put yourself in a sangha like this with Navina Prabhu and Vaisheshika Prabhu and the many other wonderful devotees that I'm sure you've heard from over the past few days. That indicates to me that you all have some level of leadership. You've been brought to Mayapur during Guru Purnima. That's when Prabhupada said the leaders of the movement should come. So whether that was your intention or not, here you are. So when you go back, people are looking at you. What's changed? What's become different in this person that wasn't there before? What has the Dham done to this person? And if you take what the Dham has done for you and you invest that into the lives of the devotees around you, then within a year or two, you will see them taking themselves out onto the street. And you'll impact via that faith that you've reinvigorated in the heart of a devotee who's already accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You'll see your Sankirtan impact increase so much more because of that faith you've reinvigorated in the devotee who already had it, rather than the very hard work of instilling it in a person who's on the street. Whereas when that person on the street comes back to a warm, loving community of people who feel very deeply connected to each other in a mood of trust, love and service, what philosophy do they need to hear? They just want to know how much more prasad can they take, and when is the next kirtan. So Sankirtan is for keeping devotees.
Got it. You like that? Would you agree with that? Yeah. Thank you, David. I was in Bali, Indonesia, walking near Denpasar, not on the beach, but near the beach, and I met a young couple from the UK, and they had a lot of tattoos and a lot of metal in their face, and I was thinking, that's weird. Bali is kind of a posh family destination. So I approached them, and they took 2 books, and they gave a donation, and after that, I said, excuse me, but don't mind me asking, you don't look like the regular holiday goers who are here in this place. And they said, you know what? Usually we're not going to talk about this, but actually, we're on our way on a mission. We're going down to Antarctica to fight against the whalers, the Japanese, who are going down there to kill the whales. So what they do is, they drive with little boats in between the hunters and the whales. They're ready to risk their lives for a bunch of fish. And I was thinking, wow, here's a young couple, they're ready to die for a bunch of fish in the South Pacific. And what am I ready to die for? You remember the saying, if you got nothing that you're ready to die for, you have nothing to live for? Prabhupada was a revolutionary. All our acharyas were revolutionaries. They all changed the game. They all mixed it up and really innovated. That doesn't stop. They all understood Yukta Vairagya and how to apply the timeless principle of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in their locale, in their situation, to be relevant, to be audible, and to be appreciable of the people of their times. That is the topic of today. That is what we're going to speak about. And we hear from another one of my dear friends, Anakadundabi Prabhu, who has dedicated his life to this. He's been doing this for decades. And he has built his life around just cultivating people and sharing the experience of Sankirtan with as many people as he can. Please. That was for you.
Thank you. Namo Shivaya Krishna Vistambhale Shivate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityananda Namaste Sarasvati Devi Govardhani Pachadini Vishya Shrivani Paschadhyasde.
And before he starts, please turn your phones on silent mode or switch them off. I don't want to see people, except if you're taking notes on your phone, then it's okay. But besides that, please do yourself a favor.
So, I will try to share with you my way to help the people and to become devotee, to appreciate Krishna consciousness. So everything is about love. We heard Navina, he was talking about Harinamananda. He said, you have to love the people you're dealing with. So on this line, we know that mercy starts at family, right? Starts in the family. So the first fellow we have to love is our fellow devotees that are with us. And how we are showing our love with them. Well, we have to facilitate their service as much as possible, appreciate them, and be empathic towards them. In other words, we have to see if somebody has some difficulty, we can help it out. Also, if he doesn't say it right away. So in this way, we will build an environment in which everybody would like to live, right? Otherwise, if you don't do that, then it is very difficult and it is also hypocrite to say to someone, join us, we are you know, we have the best way of life, you know, to be a devotee is very nice like that. So, few years ago, about 25 years ago, something like that, my Guru Maharaj, he told me, now you are you know, the very famous Arakadondubi Prabhu, and he was, you know, of course, you know, making a joke about that. And you are distributing so many books. Now we have to make sure that all the people that will take the book from you will read them. I said, I thought that Sankirtan was difficult, but this one seems impossible. So I was just praying Krishna, please Krishna give me the intelligence to fulfill this, my Guru's order. And although I know that within the order of the Guru there is the potency to carry it out. So at first I started to give a free subscription for the BTG that we had in Italy at the time, now not anymore. So I figure, you know, when they receive the BTG, to the people that seems a little bit more interested or generous or spiritual to some extent. And so I figure when they will receive the BTG after 1 month, they will remember that they have a book in their house, and they will remember our meetings, so maybe they will read the proper books. But I thought this is not, it might work, but it's not what my Guru meant, I was thinking. So the next couple of days I was going out in Sankirtan, and one of the lady, and I met an old lady, and she said, oh, finally you are here, I've been waiting for you for 1 year. And so why don't you come more often? And this story is the first one in the book that I wrote. This is for you, that I will give to you as a present later on. And so that was the start of this follow-up program that I'm doing. And because I'm doing this mainly Sankirtan door-to-door, offices, industries, shops, it is kind of easy that the people will give me their address and agree to meet me, you know, again after the first meeting. Of course, it will be a little more difficult for someone on the street that the people will give you your address because, you know, they are not in the comfort zone, you know, they are not there. So. And you can have also some other approach. But anyway, I will tell you what I am doing according to the tools that I have and the Sankirtan, the type of Sankirtan that I'm doing. So I collect the names of the people that are interested, or they are generous, like I said before, or they have some spiritual interest. And then I go and visit them regularly. Year after year, and I keep in touch with them, I call them, I email them, and before the email I was writing to them personally, each one of them a different postcard or a different letter. Sometimes I spent, you know, 1 week here in Mayapur. I remember I was in the old Gurukula, writing down, you know, all these letters, and at the end I was, ouch. About 200 people, you know, 200 different letters or postcards. And then I found out that the maximum of people that I can follow up is about 100. More than that, I can't do it. I'm limited. So what I do, I go and visit them on a regular basis every year. I will start this year in 10 days. I will start this follow-up program. And I make appointment with them, I go and visit them, I bring them presents, prasadam, new books that they don't already have. And one of the things that is common also from spiritual Sheshika Prabhu and the other Prabhu, I don't remember his name, Hare Krishna, sorry, is that we have to be very empathic with them, we have to listen to them. Well, the last story of the first chapter of This Is For You is about one person. It's called Bibi. He left his body already, and he was I mean, he liked to read so much that he was reading all the time. When he was in the shower, when he was driving, when he was eating, and, he was just reading, a compulsory reader. He was reading all the time, everything. And everything that he was reading, he was just, elaborate and try to connect one with the other. So when he met me, and there were not so many people, able to understand his mood. So he was kind of a lonely person, although he was very famous among the people in Reggio Emilia, my home city. He was the first vegetarian. He opened the first vegetarian restaurant and so on. And so when he met me, he was just pouring out whatever he elaborated during the year, and making the most strange connection with dreams, with the Vedas, with the Castaneda writings, and his experience. And I was just listening to him. Sometimes I was listening for 2, 3, 4 hours in a row, and just making little comments here and there, just to make sure that he understood that I was listening to what he was saying. And that was it. I didn't preach to him practically. I never preached to him. But it turned out that he was really appreciating Srila Prabhupada books. And he was with the devotees for 3-4 months. And he was a really spiritual person. And whatever little words I was able to say to him, he was taken to his heart. And anyway, you will read the story. I hope you will enjoy it. It's a little touching story. And then in another occasion, I have to listen to a crazy person. But this crazy person he's still alive. But he was very generous. I said he was because I'm not following up anymore, because his craziness went to a level that is not worthwhile. And I was just listening to his craziness and about, we are God and this and that, just because he was giving some donation, and so I can use this donation to increase book distribution, Krishna consciousness for his own good. And another thing that is very important is that I give to them as much time as they require from me. If they need 1 day, I give 1 day. If they need 2 days, 2 days. If they ask me to join them for supper, of course, there are rules: no meat, no eggs, and no wine. At least I don't drink wine. Sometimes they drink wine. What to do? I offer everything. In our Krishna consciousness, we don't have to compromise with the principles, but at the same time, we have to be elastic. We have to adjust to the situation in order to, not to please the persons, but to make them at easy so that they can express the best of themselves and give, whenever it's possible, as much Krishna consciousness as they can take. So this is my prayer before I begin the follow-up. Please, Krishna, give me the intelligence to engage them at the maximum of their ability to become devotee to some extent. And so at one point I understood that they were not reading so much. After 10, 20, now it's 24 years that I started this program. So I figured out, why don't I write something about them? So I wrote This Is For You, and you will find some pictures inside. Some of the people that I'm following up, they agreed to have the pictures inside. And there is a short of their biography, and some of them, they have the story narrated in the book. And that I wrote also this book in order to, let's say, to make the people understand, devotee and non-devotee, that how important Srila Prabhupada books are to read. I don't know if I meant that. And there are a lot of Sankirtan stories to inspire the devotees and make them understand, that Krishna is always there, and he's making all different arrangements, and Srila Prabhupada books are important and different. There are different chapters. They are dealing about different topics about good distribution. And so that's why I wrote that. And on top of that, although I'm not a professional, I burned the CD for them with the Ma Mantra, with other devotional song, with some, modern arrangements. And there is also a rock version of Srila Mayapur from Titikshara Prabhu that he allowed me to sing. I'm an amateur, I'm not a professional singer or player, but I did that in a professional way. It took me 1 year, along with another lady devotee with a nice voice, to burn it in a nice way in a professional studio. So they have, they don't read, but at least they can hear some Ma Mantra like that. And so this is my experience. Please, if you have questions.
Yes, Daniel, you got the mic.
I have a question. You told me, how do you reconcile the financial aspect in your preaching? Because you are giving time, you are giving books to people, but it needs to be maintained. What's the formula that you found?
Okay, thank you. So I never asked donation to the people that follow me. I never asked once, can you give for this or for that? It's just spontaneous, and this is.
You get the point? Initially, when he goes around and distributes books, he takes donation. But when he comes the second time and follows up, he never asks for money. He never asks for any project. What they want to give, they give. When they want to give, how much they want to give, it's all their own choice. Otherwise, people will start thinking, oh, there he is again, he wants money.
And I don't mention any project we are doing unless they ask. If they ask, then I say, okay, we are doing this and this and this. And about the financial, well, I'm depending on Krishna. Let's say I'm investing around between 1,000 and 1,500 euros every year to do this program, for books, for gasoline, for gas, boga, and presents, and so on. And so far, Krishna gave back with a little bit more, with a little, bakshish for my family, for my maintenance. So I'm doing like that. I'm not depending on the sponsor that I have so far. They are there only for book distribution. So whatever little money, they are not really many. Whatever the money they give, I just buy book and give free books when I'm going with distribution. So for the follow-up program, I'm depending on the mercy of Krishna. I'm anticipating the Lakshmi, and Lakshmi comes back. So far.
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
This is for you, that means... That
free gift at the end, if you stay the whole day.
box over there with the Bisleri, you can find your copy. And if you feel, if giving any donation for this, you can give it to Navina Nirada for his effort in doing this wonderful seminar.
So, when I was a young devotee, many moons ago, we were not very sophisticated in our follow-up. But what we did do was we had cards about this size, and whenever we met a person who was somewhat interested, we wrote down their name, their address, their phone number. There was no email, there was no mobile at that time. I'm from before the web, So And we wrote down which kind of books they got, and what did they give, and what are their interests. And these cards, we put them in a little box, like index cards, and then we kept it in our little almirah at the temple. And then usually we forgot about them for about a year or two later, till people had died or moved on, and we threw them away, and we made a new set of cards. And after a while it became a little frustrating, because you use so much time and effort filling in cards, but you never really do anything with them. Have you had similar experiences with that? Yeah? Okay, so I'm not the only one to blame. All right. So, a few simple things that you can do. It's 2019 right now. And I know some of you are tech savvy and some of you are not. So there are different ways of how to go about it. From having email lists using MailChimp or Google Docs, different email lists, to WhatsApp, to good old-fashioned paper and pen, and you write letters or postcards. Prabhupada wrote letters. How many letters did he write? Approximately? Over 7,000 letters. Many of them handwritten. All of us typed. 7,000 letters. Have you written 7 letters so far? When was the last time you picked up a paper and a pen and wrote a letter? And I don't just mean, a thank you note, to your mom, but, like a real letter.
97.
97, yeah. 22 years ago, right? It's work, yes, but it's well worth it. So just to give you, as a little teaser and appetizer for what we're going to do after the break, I started book distribution in 1984, and after about a year or two, we were going door to door in a very conservative neighborhood. And houses were big, the egos were big, people were sophisticated, and not many books went out. But I met one lady and she said, you know what, my nephew, he has been to India, and I'm not interested at all. But she bought 2 books for her nephew. And something inside told me, hey, her nephew. You ever had that feeling when somebody inside tells you, hey, pay attention? So I just asked her straight out, and this is the time before people got like insecure and all that, so you could just ask people straight out for contact information, and they had no problem giving it. Can I have his contact? She said, sure. So I wrote down his contact. I tried to call him. It took me several attempts before I could connect with him. And I invited him to the temple. That was before we were insecure about meeting people at the temple. And he came with his friend on a Sunday. And they both had smoked ganja right before they came, so they had red eyes, and they looked really out of it. And one of them had big, long, frizzy hair, and the other had long hair. And their whole mood was, hey, we've been to India, we know all of this, like they were older than me. Who are you, kid, trying to talk to us? But I was not intimidated or bothered by it, because I was just happy-go-lucky kid. I didn't have any angle. I didn't have an agenda. I was just so happy. Finally, somebody shows up at the temple that I invited. So I took him around, I showed him the whole temple, and then at the end, as we used to do, I showed them all the books. And they said, yeah, we already know everything, but yeah, we'll take the books, and they just put a few $100s on the table, and they took the books and they went home. And you think, okay, end of the story. No. Now it's getting interesting. You have to wake up now, because this is the part where you come in. So, I kept on being in touch with them like loosely, like every 4 or 6 months, I call him up, but he was really not really responsive to me, because he felt that he's already on a different level of understanding. But they kept coming to the temple every few months, and kind of friendly, till one fine day Bhakti Charu Maharaj shows up, and they attend his lecture, and it was like, boom, like nuclear fusion. It immediately gelled, they immediately tuned into the frequency, and they connected with the sadhu. Then Maharaj went to their home, and they started a Bhakti Vriksha program. From that program, about 25 devotees took initiation. Wow. It's not my doing, but it's just because I answered Krishna's call, who said, hey, why don't you call that guy, you know? And then why don't you follow up? And I had to give him a long leash, you know, to give him a lot of rope. And it took a while. But because I didn't have an agenda, I didn't have an angle, he was not connected to me. He did not report to me. He was not like giving me anything. But I just tried to be helpful. And as soon as the right sadhu came into the picture, boom, things took off to a whole different level. So if you want to be instrumental in this kind of work, you have to have a detached mindset. You can't have an angle. You can't have an agenda. That it's like, you're going to be in my group and you're going to be helpful for my project and I have vested interests in your money, your time, your effort. No, none of that. It has to be selfless service. When Prabhupada was in America, initially in the early days, he wrote a letter to some of his god brothers in India, and you know what he wrote to them? He told them, why don't you come here and become the Acharya? I'm going to organize the movement. I already have people who are interested, but why don't you come and you teach them? He extended the invitation to a few of his god brothers. None of them came. None of them showed up. Very few helped in any capacity. But that was Prabhupada's mood. That was Prabhupada's heart. Why? Because he's a team player. And being a Sankirtan devotee means you are a team player. I work very well with Parameshwar Prabhu, Anakadundavi Prabhu, Deva Madhava, Prema, and so many others. Why? Because they're team players. Because it's not about them, their ego, their project. It's we have one book, one mantra, one mission, one goal. When I hear that shloka, what's that shloka? Pandit. Ek mantra, one book, one mantra, one mission. What is it? Devaki Putra Gitam? Come on, say it loud. Everybody needs to hear this. Boliye.
Eko Putra Devaki Putra Gitam, Eko Mantresha Namani Jani.
Anyway, you know that one, right? You have heard that one, you read that one. Every time I hear that one, you get goosebumps, right? You think like, wow, you know? Like the whole world under one flag, under one banner. Wouldn't that be great? What about the whole ISKCON under one banner? Wouldn't that be great? What is that banner? That's Sankirtan. Samyak Kirtan, the congregational chanting. And some people do it this way, some people do it that way, some people do it their own way, some people do it, you know, whichever way. And that's perfectly fine. That's unity and diversity. Prabhupada said, every year the leaders should come to Mayapur and discuss what? Unity and diversity. Now you may think I'm just a little boy, a little girl, I want to push out a few books and go home happy, you know, eat a lot of rasgullas and just pass out in ecstasy. That's fine for a few years. But then after that you think like, hey, maybe I can do a little more. Maybe there is room for improvement. And I'm sure many of you have thought like that. That's why you're attending this seminar. Otherwise, why bother, right? So Krishna can empower you. Krishna is responsive. Prabhupada says in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna is responsive. He's ready to empower us to the degree that we're ready to take that empowerment. Do you want to hear an interesting verse from the Bhagavatam? How many of you heard Bhagavatam class this morning? There was no Bhagavatam class this morning. Got you. Do you have a problem with that? Yes, we have a problem with that. We want to hear Bhagavatam every day, right? So, this is 3rd Canto, 9th chapter, text 34. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So 3:9:34. Nana karma vitanena prajabhavi sisrikshita nama vasidatyasmingste varsyan madanugrahat. This is Krishna talking to Lord Brahma. Since you have desire to increase the population innumerably and expand your varieties of services, You shall never be deprived in this matter, because my causeless mercy upon you will always increase for all time. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A pure devotee of the Lord, being cognizant of the facts of the particular time, object, and circumstances, always desires to expand the number of devotees of the Lord in various ways. Such expansions of transcendental service may appear to be material to the materialist, but factually they are expansions of the causeless mercy of the Lord towards the devotee. Plans for such activities may appear to be material activities, but they are different in potency, being engaged in the satisfaction of the transcendental senses of the Supreme. Now, I read this morning before Mangalarti, and it's like, you know, this stuff gives you the buzz. This stuff kind of like, wow! Do you ever feel like that when you read the Bhagavatam? Yes. Like, wow! Huh? Now, this morning we heard so much nectar from different devotees who showed their appreciation, their dedication, their sacrifice for the Temple of Vedic Planetarium. And that's wonderful. That's great. That's beautiful. I don't have any millions of dollars in my pockets, and you can check. And I'm not sure how many of you are affluent. But did you know that every book that you distribute puts money into the TOVP? Did you know that? Every book that you distribute puts money into the TOVP. BBT is the biggest and longest-standing supporter of the TOVP. So if you want to help build the TOVP, distribute Prabhupada's books. Give money to the BBT, and automatically TOVP will be built. Now, if you happen to have a few $1 million or however much, then by all means go over to the office and see our dear friend Braj Vilas Prabhu, and put the briefcase or the suitcase on the table and say voila, like some have done. But if you don't, and you think, I'm just a little guy, what can I do for this thing? I tell you something you can do. You can distribute books, and you can encourage others to distribute books. And you know what? Every person out on the street who gives you $1, they're giving money to the TOVP. How about that? 99.99% of these people will never come to Mayapur. They will never put money in a hundi. They will never go and contribute for any of these projects, but because you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and all of your friends who go out with you, went out and sacrificed their time and their effort, all these people got the benefit of building the TOVP, which means they got the mercy of Prabhupada and the Parampara. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, whoever helps build this Adbhut Mandir, I come personally from the spiritual world to bring them back to Godhead. Now that's a pretty good guarantee, right? Sometimes devotees get discouraged and they say, well, I'm not advanced, I'm not pure, I don't know if I make it back to the spiritual world. But Prabhupada said, I know the back door entrance, I know the VIP stage entrance. Prabhupada has got that key. Why? Because the pure devotee has captured Krishna's heart. And because of that, Krishna feels indebted to him. And that's why pure devotion is very rare. It's very rarely given. We have a lot of individuality here. This is our wealth. This is our great fortune. Let's cherish it. We cannot put round pegs into square holes. You're not going to be me, and I'm not going to be you. Everybody is going to be who they are. But we can do that for Krishna. That's the beauty of this process. After the break, we're going to speak a little more on what it takes to actually keep people's attention, keep them attracted, and nurturing their plant of bhakti so that they can also grow luxuriantly. Just like you see Masheshika Prabhu. It's a luxurious plant which is giving fruits in abundance. There is no scarcity mentality. It's just giving, 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 giving. If you want to become like that, come back at 12:15 and we'll talk about it. I appreciate it. Devotees, blissful engaged in Sankirtan. So one way of how to distribute a book, and I really like this line, and I'm going to share it with you because I think it's helpful. You ask people, yoga, you heard of yoga, right? Everybody says yes. So yoga, people think it means just stretching your legs, stretching your arms. But this book teaches you about how to stretch your mind. How flexible is your mind? And that gets them thinking a little bit. I also like this book a lot, Easy Journey to Other Planets. People like traveling, they like going places and meeting people. So this teaches you about how to actually do that. And have you heard of chakras? Yeah? How are your chakras, man? What, you don't have the chakra reader? They're good. You know? This book is the chakra reader. You know, it will give you a clear reading on your chakras. How's your karma, man? I don't know. So write these down. These are lines. These are different hooks with which you can hook people. How is your chakra? How are your chakras? How is your karma? You know, how is your mind doing? Do you have a mind? Yes. No, right? You're talking to yourself all day. Yeah, right. So just get them to think a little bit and then connect with that. And then see where it goes. So it's not rocket science, it's just making conversation, but leading the conversation in a way so that people will actually be interested in what you got to say. You can give a book, and then the spectacular thing. If people show interest, you can actually take their contact. Now please put the books down. These are, I wanted to give them at the end, but he was very generous. He already gave them out now. So don't get distracted by these books. You can read them at your leisure. Take people's contact information. Now I know some of you are very app savvy, so you can just key it into your phone while you're with them. And there's such a thing as WhatsApp, there's such a thing as MailChimp, there's other email programs. You can just take their name, their contact number, their email, and then just send them. What I usually do personally, because I'm like Parameshwar, we're like, you know, of the old school. So what I usually do is I just take people where I feel like I need to really take this person's contact. And that happens once a day, twice a day, maybe every 2 or 3 days. Depends on how it. Prem is nodding his head. Not like, oh, they took a book and gave a donation. I have to take their contact information. No, I give them a flyer. I give an invitation. You know, and the ball is in their court. Let them come to us. But if Krishna tells me, yes, take it. So I take it. And then what do? Usually the same evening, I text them. And I tell them, hey Robert, it was really great meeting you. Thanks for your sincere talk, for the sincere talk that we had. I hope you like the book. If you have any questions, please let me know. 95% of the people reply back and say, yeah, it was really great meeting you. Thanks a lot. I'll try to read it. I might drop by, like that. And then I just wait. And maybe a couple of weeks later, I invite them to a program. But oftentimes, I feel like they have to pick it up. They have to start responding. Otherwise, if it's always me going out there, going after them, it becomes too much one-sided. Like in any relationship, if it's you always making the call, if it's you always going knocking on that friend's door, how much of a friend is that person really? And how needy are you? So, you gotta find that balance. Now I know some of you are super selfless and you're ready to put unlimited amounts of time into people. I'm not one of those. I'm not. Because that's just different personas. We're just speaking with Parameshwar and Deva and Prem about, we're all individual and we all have our own cycle, physical makeup. So you just got to be yourself, but be productive being yourself. Don't be stagnant. Don't be lame. Don't be insecure. Be yourself, but be your better self. We all can do better than we're doing right now. Would you agree with that? Yes. Yes. So then use that as a line on Sankirtan. We could all be doing better than we're doing right now. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
And the person goes, yes, of course, yeah. Okay, so here's a first start. Take this book, you know. This will help you to be your better self. They like that kind of stuff. It's simple stuff, It's stuff that people can agree upon, but it's not dogmatic, it's not sectarian, it's not join my religion or wear my dress or you know, live the way I live life, shave my head. No, it's just try to evolve, try to become a better person, try to think outside of I, me, and mine, how to be a little more selfless. Oftentimes I talk to people about relationships, you know, and everyone is really concerned about how they look. So I tell them, you know, you look okay. But if you'd be a little bit more kind, you would actually, you know, make so much more impression on other people. And I tell that people straight out. And they accept it, you know, they agree with it because it's true. So, getting back to the point, there was one that I wrote down here that I can't read my own handwriting, which is kind of symptomatic for this whole episode. Yeah, the doctor has to feel the pain of the patient. If you want to be a doctor, a therapist, am I right or am I right? You have to feel the pain of the patient. If you are insensitive and you cannot feel their pain, it most likely means you cannot feel your own situation, your own predicament. Then do something else. Don't be a therapist, don't be a doctor. Just go do something else. There's so many trades. But if you want to be in the caregiving business, you have to actually care. Because if people feel that you just don't give it, you just don't care about them, then you're in the wrong trade. Now you may say, I'm an introvert, I'm shy, or I'm just oblivious, or I don't, you know. That's not an excuse, because our parampara cares. Jiva Goswami writes in his commentary to the, I almost said 97th chapter of the Krishna book, of the 10th canto. No, the 87th chapter, Prayers of the Vedas personified. There's only 90 chapters, by the way. He says that the cause of the universe, you want to know what the cause of the universe is? Yes. What do you think? What's the cause of this universe? Love. It's compassion. It's the Lord's compassion to give the rebellious living entity a playground where they can try to fulfill their desires. It's love, yeah. It's His love. It's His compassion. It's His grandeur of heart. He says, okay kids, you want to play? Okay, here, go play. And not only that, and then just go and play and wreck yourself, but the Lord comes, He sends His incarnations, He sends His pure devotees, He appears as a scripture, and He says, okay, here are the ways how you can come back to me. That's the cause of the universe. It's compassion. So if we're trying to be Sankirtan devotees, but we cannot cultivate that compassion for whatever reason, then we have to go a little deeper into the depths of our hearts and try to figure out what is it that's blocking us from doing so. So we can set up so many systems and so many structures, and you can have all the Excel sheets and spreadsheets and all the technology, and everything is super duper, but then you come and you meet the person and just feel like, you know, I don't want to hang out with these kind of people, you know. These are not my kind of people. Do you ever feel like that? Or is it just me? It can happen. It can happen. And sometimes it's because we're too much in our own little heads. But we should try to create an ambience in our communities, in our centers, or in our own heads, that people want to associate with us. People want to be around. Their only question should be, I want to become like you. And I want to meet you again, and I want to meet your friends, and I want to spend more time with you, because that's what's really happening. That's what's interesting to me. That's what I want to do. And if they don't, they're going to stay as far away as possible for as long as possible. And no matter how much you chase them down, and no matter how much money you throw at them in order to try to woo them and entice them and persuade them, it's not going to happen. At best, it will be lip service. So don't go after people's lip service. Don't go after people's money. Go straight for the heart. You know, like in martial arts, you're going to find that one weak point, right? One weak point. And what's the weakest point? It's the heart. If you touch their heart, that's the soft spot. It's where the soul is. It's where Krishna is. If you actually touch people's hearts and you evoke, Jananivas Prabhu gave us beautiful classes on the Bhagavatam in our Bhaktivedanta course on the roof here. And he said, it's all about trying to evoke that loving feeling in the heart of the living entity. That feeling that, yes, I would like to do something for Krishna. I would like to do some devotional service. I'd like to be helpful. Have you seen how people's life changes when all of a sudden they have that out of their own volition? They kind of come to the point where they're like, yeah, I would like to do this. And we have heard from a person who started distributing books by themselves, or they started helping, giving out prasadam, or they just try to do something. And by doing devotional service, they got that immediate realization. Hey, this is great. I want to do this. We had a program in Silicon Valley where the corporates come and help serve out prasadam. So the bankers, the IT people, the whatever firms, you know, consulting companies, they come with their t-shirts on which says the name of their company and we serve, okay. So they come and do community service. There was one lady from the Swiss Banking Institute, middle-aged lady, and she came to serve out prasadam. And afterwards she was like all excited, like, when can we do this again? This feels so great. And we were like, it's just serving prasad, you know, it's like you're giving out a bit of rice here, you know, like, well, why are you so excited about it? And she said, you know, it's funny, I'm 47 years old, this is the first time in my life I've done something without getting paid for it. It's the first time I've done something without getting paid for it, without any, you know, personal interest. And it felt so good, I want to do it again. I remember 30 years ago I went to India, and my mom gave me a big donation before I went, and when I came back, she said, I want to give you the same amount again. I said, why? You just gave it to me before I came to India, so why do you want to give again? You know, and we ask people sometimes, why would you want to give again? And what's the answer that they usually say? It made me feel so good. Please just take it. Anaka, he's not asking anybody for money. He just goes out and gives himself, gives his time. And people become captured. One of Prabhupada's godbrothers wrote about his spiritual master, Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, about his encounter with him. He wrote his experiences, and then he said something very powerful. He said, you want to hear this? Yes. Yes. You sure? Yes. It will change your life. Yep. Are you ready? Yes. Yes. He said, and then I was captured. You remember the moment when you were captured by the sadhu? Or like they captured your heart? And you felt like this person is for real. This person is not messing around. This person is all in. I can trust this person. I can take shelter of this person. That's the response that we're trying to evoke. Now I know that's a tough call. It's a high call. And it's not always easy to live up to that. But in our own humble ways, in our own small ways, we can reflect some of that potency. And it can be a moment, or it can be many small moments that lead up to that. So, we're going to discuss a little bit on what it takes to actually bring people in. Because honestly speaking, in ISKCON, we're pretty much number one in first contact. I have seen devotees out there in the world in all possible and impossible places distributing Prabhupada's books. Knocking on every door, leaving no stone unturned, going to legal and illegal places, and putting out the good word of Lord Chaitanya. And that's fabulous. That's really spectacular. But when it comes time to actually cultivate and harvest, I'm afraid to say we're not second class, we're not third class, we're not on the list. We're not on the map, so to speak. We're putting a lot of effort into putting the good word out there, but there are other groups who are really expert at harvesting and at taking in the fruits, sometimes even our fruits, the work that we have done. I remember in the 80s when I started book distribution, nobody had heard about yoga, vegetarianism, karma, reincarnation. People looked at you like you were an alien. They thought you're from Mars. You're like some freak. And nowadays, this is like common standard knowledge. Like Every kindergarten kid, you know, talks about my karma and this and that and the other thing. In my last life I did this and now I'm doing that, you know. My dad's a vegan and I'm like a fruitarian. And, you know, you have to do better than that nowadays. You can speak about bhakti. You can speak about selfless love, you know, pure devotional service. And that will spin people's melon because that's the next level. Okay? So, somebody can read this? Whoever's got a mic and a voice and can read?
Seeing the potential while on distribution. See yourself as a preacher and an integral part of the preaching mission. Take time to give attention to receptive people. Get names and addresses. Follow up on them or make sure that someone else does. Invite these people to the Sunday feast and other programs. Consider visiting genuinely interested people in their own homes.
Thank you, Nanda. Now, a couple of words of caution here. Invite people to the Sunday feast. I do not invite everybody to the Sunday feast. The temple that is associated with us is predominantly more ethnic, and people who are from that ethnic background, I invite them to the temple. But Western audience, I invite them to our outreach place, to a specific program. Some people you should invite them to your home. Some people you should invite them to a gathering, like Bhakti, Sangha, Riksha, whatever, Namat, whatever you want to call it. So you have to know what kind of people they are. If you're in a university environment, much better to invite them to your college program, which is on campus, just for students. Imagine, there's a young person who comes into your temple and 99% is Indian. And the people all speak in Hindi and Sanskrit and Bengali and South Indian and whatnot. And this person just feels like, I'm out of place, I'm outnumbered. I don't know their language, I don't know their customs, I don't know their food, I don't know what to do, what not to do. So they just stand at the back of the wall and go, and they just wait for that moment that they can bolt for the door and never come back. But if they're in an environment where people speak their language and they know their customs and it's more about them than about some other type of program, then they can relate. You see, nowadays we're in postmodernism. Postmodernism means there's no more isms. It's just I, me, and mine. It's about me. And if you're ready to deal with me, then I'm happy to relate to you. But if you want to preach or you want to tell me your dogma, your doctrine, then please get out of my planet. You know, I don't like that. Now, again, word of caution: if you're from an Indian background, people like to hear Shastra, people like to hear shlokas, people want to see you as an ISKCON representative just preaching Sanatana Dharma. And that's perfectly alright. That works for that section, that demographics of people. But you will notice, if you're in a big city, and any of the, bigger cities nowadays, where not just the kids, but also the working class of people are more and more westernized, they will not appreciate that approach so much. But if you go up to them and you say, hi, how are you doing? They're like, wow, oh, you speak like a normal person, I think I can talk to you. You understand what I mean? You have to know what type of a person that you are interacting with. Any questions on this? Yes? Have you got a microphone in your back? It's coming. Shut this up.
When you were talking about inviting people to the temple,
yes.
Sometimes when people look at you, then you are dressing like normal people when they look at you in the streets. When they come to the temple, they see people like shaved with strange wear, like dress. Yeah, it's like a shock for the people because they meet you with a cap and normal clothes.
Yeah, they think like they're in the wrong place. It's like, it's shocking. And we have all experienced that. Have you had experiences like that? Okay, so then have a program just for newcomers. Have a program just for Westerners. For instance, in Zurich, we have a big Tamil congregation. And we have the Swiss people. So they have 2 Sunday feasts. Sunday morning from 10 till 1 o'clock is the Tamil program, where they have their type of prasad and their type of kata and their masala, and it's all about them. And then in the afternoon, from 4 o'clock till 7 o'clock, it's for the Westerners, with their type of food and their type of talk. And then there's a big Gora Artik, and whoever is there just blows the roof off and does kirtan, right? Exactly. It's still going on. So, and it works. It's not one shoe size fits all. So you have to understand who is your audience and what is their need. And you have to be able to relate to their need. When Prabhupada was at John Lennon's estate, the caretaker, the person who would take care of the grounds, Prabhupada spoke about British sports cars with that guy. And he captured that guy's heart because he could relate to him. He spoke something to him that was important and dear to him.
I was wondering if you could describe what a home visit might look like.
Yeah, a home visit means you go to someone's home and depending, again, they just got to find you and in your environment, and you take part in the program that you do there. Usually it's very informal, but sometimes it can be a little more structured. It depends on your style. I've seen different varieties of home programs. Sometimes it's very informal. People just get together and they talk and they have a little bit of refreshment and they just make friends. Niranjan Swami told me when I was sent to San Francisco, he said, have you been to California before? Have you been to San Francisco before? Like, this is like as west as you can go. There's no rules, there is no protocol. It's just make it about them, he said. It's just about making friendship. The only question, the only criteria that you should have, what is the criteria of your success in cultivation and follow-up? They want to see you again. That is the only criteria. They want to meet you again. That is the secret of your success. Yes?
To that point, there's a church in the States which is incredibly popular, and they have a process of bringing somebody into their congregation, 7 steps. And the first 5 steps involve only dealing with the person at your own house or in some other public setting. You don't bring the person to the temple, to the church, until they're already accepting the entire philosophy and have professed that Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior and that their church is the one they want to be a part of. Then they come to the temple or the church.
Thank you. Pray him and then that's it. Let's move on.
Hare Krishna. What we used to do with the devotees that we invite to
You're doing home programs, right?
Bhakti Vriksha, yeah. So,
are you following the manual or are you doing your own stuff?
No, we follow the manual with the different parts of the 6 parts of the program. And when we invite people that we make contact in Sankirtan or whatever, or also in the temple, first we don't send them to the temple. And when we start with the meetings and some weeks or some months later, if they have that interest to go to the temple, we go with them. And we sit with them, we take prasadam with them, we take care of them.
And you make sure nobody messes with them. Because remember when you came to the temple the first time, somebody came and said, how many rounds you chant? How many regular principles you follow? And you go like, and not just one person, but several persons. And after a while it becomes kind of a little redundant, it becomes a little, and especially if after 35 years people still come up to you and talk to you like that. And it's like,
Like we wake up 3:30, we take bath with cold water. Yeah, we wear COVID.
Yeah, and everybody's rolling their eyes because half of the people are not doing it, you know. So, and the other half knows it's not about the ritual. So it's just not a point. Just to Deva Madhav's point, and then we come to you. Thank you. You were finished, or you wanted to add something on? When I came to the temple the first time, my friend in school had invited me. And I waited for him at the train station, and he had actually invited me for Mangalarti. But I thought, 4 o'clock at the train station? I must have heard the wrong thing, so I waited there at 7 o'clock, and he wasn't there. So then I made my way to the temple, and I just reached there for breakfast. And they're like, it's already over, you know, like it's already all done. Yeah, we start at 4:30, you know. So, but because I was young, and I was open, so the first person who came just preached to me about vegetarianism. And I was like, yeah, this makes sense, dude. And he's like, okay, quit it, you know, drop meat. And I was like, okay, fine. And then the next guy came along and he hands me a japamala, you know. And he says, we chant, this is how it works. This is how you do it, this is how you hold it. Okay, all right. So start with 4. Okay, I'll do 4, you know. Because I was innocent. And I was just accepting whatever people were telling me. But if you meet a person who is a little older than 15, who is a little more settled in their ways, you cannot take that type of approach. Because they will feel like, who are you to tell me how to lead my life? You know? Like, I appreciate you sharing your practice, but don't try to impose or don't try to expect me to conform to your reality. Because that's considered insensitive, judgmental, and overbearing. And nowadays, that's not, you know, very well looked upon. So again, you have to know who are you talking to. Some people are super open like sponges and they just give me more, give me more, give me more. But then at some point you should ask them, you know, are you taking any medication? You know, like, are you okay? Does your mom know you're here? So you have to know. You have to know, is this person actually making their own life choices? Pretty?
And also, like, sometimes they want to go to Mangalarti, but for different reasons, perhaps the temple is not able to receive Mataji because they don't have the accommodation or don't have the Matajis to be taking care of them. So sometimes we do, like in the Bhakti Diksha program, Mangala Party. So they come at 7 o'clock and we take prasada and we chant. We sleep, like they have one room for devot, for Prabhus, one room for Mataji, and then 4:30 a.m. we do Mangalarti, Bhattam class, Prasadam together, and then we do some another activities. So that's also very nice to give them, perhaps what the temple sometimes can't, because they don't have the possibility to be to a lot of people at the same time.
Very nice. Did you hear that? She's recreating the temple program in her own home, in a family atmosphere, very personable, very small scale, very much one-on-one. And in this way people just get a feel for it and they can ask questions. They can also opt out. They can say, no, I would not like to do this. Like sometimes people are like, you have to do this now, okay? So what is this? This is the foot wash, you know? You have to drink the foot wash now. I saw in a temple that I was just visiting now, there was a whole line of tourists from a boat, you know, and they try to give them Charanamrita, and some people actually ask, what is this? And they just kind of, you know. So you have to know. Otherwise, if you're forcing people, and that can be little people or big people, if you're forcing people, at some point they will rebel. But if you're allowing people to come forward and to take part in it on their own terms, on their own volition, then it's really powerful. They can really grow strong and they really take to it. Back to Prema? Yeah. We got the Prema and Premi connection here.
Something very simple, the way that we give obeisance in the altar. We teach them the 3 different ways to give obeisance, because many people don't like in Argentina to put the head in,
To lie flat on the ground?
Yeah, so that's very difficult for them, they don't understand. So we explain the 3 ways of the Dandavat, then you can put your knees, and you can put your hands together, and that's okay also. So not to be so heavy, step by step.
Okay. All right, we got one here. Microphones? Right here.
Just another point that I've noticed, going back to the point you were mentioning about cultivation. And sometimes it's like when we're out, we just need to be more conscious of the words we use in front of guests. Because sometimes what I've seen and realized is when there's devotees and it's a mixed crowd, there'll usually be devotees coming in. Like for example, I was in the kitchen once cultivating this new guy who was coming along, and then this devotee came in and he said, "Hare Krishna Prabhu, is this cup Munchi?" And he was just like totally bewildered. He was like,
Did you hear that?
I'm not sure what's going on.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, is this cup Munchi? Like using all lingo that means nothing to this person, and it's the most insensitive type of situation. So English, please. Yeah. And also another word of caution is the us and them mentality. If you start talking about, like us and them, and us means like we're the self-righteous, we're the saved, we're the truth and the light, and everyone else is the lost cause, the demons, the ignorance, the infidels. People will feel alienated, they will feel rubbed the wrong way, and they just never want to come back, ever. So, in our place that we opened in San Francisco, it's a small place downtown, like 26 2nd Avenue, storefront. We make sure that the presentations are inclusive and not exclusive. We speak the Gita, we speak the philosophy, but we're presenting it in a contemporary context so people can grasp it, they can relate to it. If people come from an Indian background, we tell them go to the temple. There's a temple in Mountain View and there's a temple in Berkeley, because you already know all this. All the stuff that we're doing here, you already know it. Go to the big place. So, the leader has to be conscious about the program that's going on and has to be in touch with the people who lecture and with all the different variables that are going on in the program. Or like, for instance, food. It has to be relatable. It has to be appreciable to that audience. And that's not so difficult. It just takes a bit of sensitivity. Yes?
So when you mix children and adults together, because adults we are very maturely, children they don't find here and there.
So you should have a program separate for children. That's why in temples which are successful, they have Sunday school, they have children's activities, they have playgrounds, they have a whole bunch of stuff. Like churches, they have church ministry for youth. There's like a whole different set of range of activities for children up to youth, teenagers. They don't cram everybody into the same box. So we're not there yet, but we have to know where we want to go, okay? We're still, okay, everybody in the same thing, doing the same stuff. But like here, we have the Russian program. Have you noticed the tent out in the back? Have you noticed a few Russian people in Mayapur? Just a few, right? And they have children. So you have to find activities for the children. Otherwise, they will make your life difficult. Okay, we're moving on here. Somebody likes to read this, Manu?
Teamwork in the temple. Ensure that your department and its members cooperate together with Bhakta and Bhakti leaders, preachers and trainers, and management in general. Be unified in your attempts to spread Krishna consciousness. Through exemplary teamwork, many people will be attracted to join ISKCON. Try to create harmony in all your dealings. There should be first-class hospitality for all guests coming to our temples.
In your centers, do you have a bhakta program? Who has a bhakta program or bhakti program in your temple? Okay, it's about 40%, it's not bad. But ideally, there should be, regionally, if not in your own center, at least regionally, there should be a training program of 3 to 6 months or even a year for newcomers. Just to give people the full exposure about how this Krishna consciousness works. If you don't have it, talk it up with your temple president. Try to make it happen. In your center, do you have a hospitality team? Who has a hospitality team in their temple? You know what hospitality means? It's not about a hospital, you know? It's about being hospitable. Which means that when you arrive at the place, there is somebody there who smiles and says, welcome. Thank you for coming here. I'm really happy that you finally made it here. You came back from Nepal, right? Or Bangladesh, or where did you go? Where did you go? Huh? Where is that? Border to which country? Nepal. Okay, very nice. So, you know, if you travel and then you meet a friendly face who is welcoming you and who is asking you how you're doing and where you're from, and it's just being personable, it makes such a difference in the world. But if you come to a place, and I'm sure you've had that experience, sometimes you come into the temple and nobody looks at you, nobody talks to you. People come in one door, they walk around, and they walk out the other door, and they have not interacted with one devotee. Have you ever seen this scenario? Yes. How did it make you feel? Fantastic, right? No, Prabhupada would not be pleased. Prabhupada said if the pujari is doing arti and the guest walks in the temple, he can stop doing arti, get down from the altar, take care of the guest, and then carry on with the arti. Krishna is not insecure. He's not worried about his arti. He is concerned about his guest. Because his guest has come to his house, and no one's there to receive him. And that's what's worrying Krishna. He's not worried about, 3, 2, 4, 7, I'm checking on you now. How many circles are you doing? He's not worried about that. What he's worried about is somebody walked in the door and nobody looked at that person. And that person went away thinking, I will never come back to these people. You know how Krishna feels about that? I will never come back here. That hurts Krishna's heart. So if we're actually caring, then please create a hospitality department in your temple, in your center, and check out the whole operation, from the car park to the toilets, from the front door to the prasadam area, from who takes care of the guest rooms, if you have any, to the restaurant, from the courses and educational department to the devotee care department, from the finance and donation office to all the other loose ends that might be out there, that might just freak people out. And when there's feedback and people give you suggestions and give you complaints, don't just dismiss them. It's not enough to put a letterbox somewhere in a courtyard and it says, complaints and suggestions, like in the airport, and once a month the janitor comes and empties it into the dustbin, and puts it back there. And they say, hey, complaint department, we have it, No. If we're not able to tune into people's needs, we will become irrelevant. I'm coming back to you. Have you heard of Pan Am?
Yes.
No, it's way before your time. Pan Am was the airline in America. Where are they? Gone. Have you heard of Nokia?
Yes.
Nokia was the mobile together with Motorola. Years later. Where are they? They're gone, for the most part. So many airlines gone, so many hotels gone, so many businesses gone. Why? At some point, they lost touch with reality. They lost touch with the needs of their customers. It happens to churches too. Churches are struggling big time. People are leaving them by the millions. Why? Because they have lost touch with the reality and with the needs of their customers. If we don't want that to happen to us, we have to be in constant contact and communication. Not that we have to adapt and change our books and our philosophy to suit the mindset of the people, but that we're sensible and sensitive enough to explain it to them, to make it attractive and relatable to them, and to not expect them to follow everything, but to take as much as they can and to be on the progressive path of bhakti. Is bhakti a progressive path?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Thank you. Any questions on this? Yes. We do have microphones.
There's another thing that I've noticed most often can happen, so I was just wondering, I'll ask you and see what's the best possible way to deal with this thing. So when there's a new person that comes in, usually there's multiple people trying to cultivate them.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I've seen people just get real afraid because what's the best way to
Sometimes, like you have a new person walking in the door and 4 people jump on him, you know? And everybody claims, no, I saw him first. No, he's my guy. Huh? Or in India, it's like, he's my donor, right? Huh? Nobody can touch to him. Nobody can talk to him. How does that make that person feel like? These guys don't know what they're doing. They just don't know what they're doing. If you walk into a store and 5 salespeople jump on you, then you should go have a word with the manager and say, hey, why don't you train your people, you know? I'm the customer. I'm coming here to spend my money. I would like to talk to one person who knows how to give me proper service. Can you figure that out? Because that's your job. So as leaders, it's our job to institute that if a newcomer comes, one person who is able to relate to that guest goes and talks and gives to that guest. And not that 5 people sit down and say, okay, so where are you from? Where do you come from? What do you work? How much money you make? And you go like, excuse me? Hello? Have you ever had this experience? Have you ever seen this scenario? Or is it just me? It's still going on as we speak. So we have to stop these bad practices. Root them out. Just don't tolerate them, by all means. And the solution, the key, is education. That's why we're having these seminars. Because most of the time, we're not even aware of that kind of stuff. In some cultural contexts, it's perfectly okay to ask people, what's your job and how much money do you make? But in other cultures, that's not at all appreciated. That's a no-no. In some cultures, you can talk about the wife and the kids and the family and the uncles and the aunts. In Arab culture, you don't talk about the wife. You don't talk about the kids. You just have to know what's permissible, what's appreciated, and what's not appreciated. And if you don't have any common sense, then find somebody who has and learn from them. Now we know in Kali Yuga, the most uncommon thing is common sense. It's very uncommon. But it can be acquired. It can be learned by practice. Any other questions on this? Yes?
Can I ask one of those?
You got the mic right there. You might as well use it.
Can I ask it's a little backtracking, but
sure.
General question. So with cultivating
we're not backtracking. We're only going forward here. So you lost your chance. Yeah, please go.
It's about making devotees.
Yeah.
So,
no, I'm okay. I'm just making the point. Sometimes people have issues they want to talk about, but you have an agenda that you want to talk about. And now what is more important? Your agenda or the person's need for addressing the topic? I'm just making this as a case scenario that happens over and over and over and over again. We have to be flexible, adaptable, ready to drop what we're about to be doing in order to relate to this person. Please go ahead.
So when making devotees, I've noticed, especially with neophyte devotees, it seems that when you're trying to just get someone interested and you're just listening to what they're saying and you're absorbing all this stuff just to make them like you, where do you find that line between getting, I'm not conscious right now, like...
Well, the line is usually when you're like, hey, should I go back with you? Let's go out and party or what? I mean, where's the line? The line is, you're listening to them to make them feel good. But how long does that take? And why are they here? I mean, they're here for a certain reason. They want to find out about Krishna consciousness. So how long does the listening part last before the sharing part happens? And, I mean, there has to be a give and take there. There's certain people who just want to talk, but Devammadava has more experience in this right behind you, so he'll let you know how much, when enough is enough.
Vaishya Prabhu, when he was sharing with us, I think he gave a really important point about the place that we come from when we're doing that listening. Because it's really hard work to listen if we're motivated that I want them to like Krishna, I want them to like me, etc. And then when do I start, when do I stop? And it's arduous. But when we're coming from that place of discovering that which Krishna has already put inside of them, and finding out what's wonderful about them, it actually becomes something exciting for us to do. And then it's nourishing, and they feel that anticipation inside of us for connecting with them, and it happens very quickly.
How quickly?
It's spontaneous. Literally,
it can be instantaneous.
Right.
Yeah.
It's something that never has an end. Once it's started, it's ever increasing, as we talk about often.
And initially, it's a little artificial and a little schematic. And you have your riddles and your different loops and your different topics that you're familiar with and that you like to talk about because you know where it's going and you can put Krishna in there. And after a while, it becomes more natural and more fluid, as they say. And you can be talking about anything and everything and connected with Krishna. But that comes with experience, with maturity, and with deep prayer and intuition. Like the example I gave from Prabhupada. Prabhupada was not afraid about talking about sports cars, or about whatever it is that person is into, because he knew, I want this person to appreciate Krishna consciousness. How will he appreciate Krishna consciousness? By appreciating me. So, but you have to know how to engage and where to draw the line. You going to finish your point, or you're done? Any other points related to this? So hospitality team. Yes.
Okay, when you are cultivating one people, and for instance, that people, they already take like a japa beat.
They take what?
A japa beat, the beats.
Es como de qué manera preguntarse o inspirar a la persona si está cantando o nunca más decirle nada y
In what way we have to approach them? I mean, to ask them if they are chanting or not. What's the best way to approach that?
Are you chanting around? I knew it. This is a very insensitive question, Unless you have a relationship with that person, to get into their lives and practices is considered very rude and very overbearing. How many times have people come to you and ask you that? Countless times, right? And you're like, what does it matter to you? Why is it your business to ask me if I'm chanting, how much I'm chanting? Why don't you ask me how you're doing? How you're feeling? Are you relishing your japa? Are you making advancement in your spiritual practices? Because you could be telling the person, no, I'm not chanting, I stopped chanting 6 months ago. Oh, Haribol, okay, and they walk off, and life goes on. So, it's not about what you ask so much, it's more like, what is your intention? And people can really feel your intention. Does it come from a point of genuine concern, and loving care and affection? Or is it just trying to, talk stuff, Like I speak with so many people, because I'm a talker, and so people come to me also, and sometimes they ask about, mutual friends or old friends from the past. And what's the first question they always ask? Is he chanting? How much is he chanting? Is he following? I'm like, dude, you haven't heard about him in 10 years, and the only thing that you want to know is he chanting, is he following the rules? I mean, that's a real sign of immaturity. Why not ask, how's he doing? You know, what's going on in his life, like that. So we cannot fake genuine care and affection. It's not that you put on a t-shirt, you know, and it says, no, I'm a caregiver, you know, you have to trust me. It's really something that has to be genuine, it has to be personal. And people say so many nice things, but if they don't mean them, then it's really pointless. So it's really a matter of saying what you mean and meaning what you say. We have to be authentic in our approach, otherwise it will become superficial and meaningless. So try to work on these points in your own life, in your temples. Create a hospitality team. The fan is not working, huh? Maybe sit closer to the window or to the door where you get a little current of air flowing. I mean, try to get it fixed, I'm sorry. So try to establish these things in your communities. Also, when you distribute books, sometimes there's feedback that comes to the temple. Like phone calls, like letters, like complaints. Have somebody who knows how to deal with that. Don't just, you know, disregard it. Take it into consideration and make sure people get heard and get reply. So in this way, you can actually... Did you read that section on customer care? Who read it? How many of you read the section in the handbook on customer care? It was homework. It was suggested. So please, till tomorrow, read that section on customer care, because it is important. So we'll speak more about tomorrow, about the future of how devotees will develop in their own lives and how they will transition through different services and through different stages and phases of life. Today, we're mostly speaking about how to care for the newcomer, but also keep in mind that every devotee has been a newcomer and wants to be appreciated. Because sometimes there is that tendency that we give a lot of attention to newcomers, but those people who are regulars, we don't really bother to deal with them. You know, it's funny, there was one person, he kept coming to the temple for decades. And what page is customer care?
28.
18.
No, it's contact follow-up.
No, not contact follow-up. Customer care. Customer care, page 18. That's your homework. 18, yes. So, one person, he was coming to the temple for decades. And the devotees were intrigued. Why don't you become a member of our congregation? And the person said, no. You know, it's like this. You treat newcomers first class. When I see how you treat yourself and you interact amongst yourself, I've decided to stay a guest and a newcomer forever. That was his honest observation. And sometimes it's true. So we, again, put a lot of effort into newcomers, but then once a person becomes a regular, how many times does a person have to show up in order to become qualified as a regular? How many times? More than 3, right? You've seen a guy for 3 times, you stop talking to him, right? Because you know he's got the books, he knows how it works, he's already, he's been there, done that, so you just don't talk to him. And you just keep on talking to the new person. Then who talks to that person who has come more than 3 times? Did you notice that they start talking amongst themselves? They start making little groups amongst themselves. And all of a sudden you have like a movement inside the movement. And this can go on all the way for many, many years. That these people are totally disconnected. And they start doing their own thing. But because nobody was relating with them and was training them, they just went off in a totally different tangent, in a totally different direction. And usually they just took off and went off doing something else.
So, pray.
Yeah, and something something that happens often is that other groups, different lines, in Argentina there are many, they took them, because they are innocent, and they are looking for attention and for care, and they start going to another programs and get initiation and whatever.
And they get attention somewhere else by somebody who cares for them? And they never come back, and they're gone.
Yeah, like we do the hard work to do the Sankirtan, follow up for some time, and then the other one took all the...
And also, they offer an easy way, you know? You don't have to change things to wrong. Only one wrong, only there is.
Yeah, there's so many groups out there who make it super easy. They say you don't have to follow regular principles, you don't have to do rounds, you don't have to do all these things. Easy bhakti, just take it cheap, like that. So we'll speak tomorrow about validated mobility, that people can move on and people can evolve in their service. We'll speak about that tomorrow. What else was there, what I'd like to talk about today? Yeah, I wanted to share with you a couple of things I read this morning, and it was pretty interesting. I read about Lord Varanadev's appearance. And that's the third canto of Bhagavatam. You hear this guy out? Prabhupada was saying that you have to hear from the Guru for a very long time with great endeavor. Now you've been sitting here, today's day number 4, and you've been listening a few hours to me. So sometimes the mind gets a little rebellious. Does your mind ever get a little rebellious? Yes. Okay, it's not just me. Okay. So why do I have to go to Bhagavatam class again? Didn't we have Bhagavatam class yesterday? The day before yesterday? Why do we have to sit in this classroom again? Because Krishna says that you have to hear for a very long time. But it's not just about the time that we spend, but we should put some endeavor into it. Great endeavor. You have to actually be interested. If you're kind of like, hey, actually I'm bored, but I like the lunch, it's kind of okay, but the rest is, I'm really kind of wasting my time here. I'm waiting to get out of here. So even though your body is physically parked here, you're actually not here, technically. I was on Haight-Ashbury, I met a man, and he told me, this Swami, I met him in New York. I said, how come? He said, I walked into his storefront. I went right into his room. And you know what? I sat down with the man. And then I was like totally excited. Okay, what did Prabhupada tell you? What happened? And that's the fun about being in San Francisco. You meet a lot of people who met Prabhupada. You want to know what Prabhupada told him? Yes. Would you like to know?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
You actually care?
Yeah.
Are you awake?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to tell you. Prabhupada told him nothing. He said, I was just sitting there, and I said nothing, and he said nothing. And it was perfect. Because he understood that I understood. That he understood. That I understood. You can go on. And for 40 minutes, it was just silent. And it was perfect. And then, somebody gave me some food, and I left. He had to wait for 50 years till he got a book of Prabhupada. Why? Because even though he was so close to Prabhupada, because he was not interested in listening, Prabhupada didn't speak to him. Because he knew this guy was not ready to listen. So he didn't bother. So sometimes we're in class, we're in Bhagavatam, we take a seminar, we're in front of our spiritual master, but because we're so full of it and our mind is so busy and rapping and raving and screaming at us, we can't hear one word. We just see talking heads, we just see mouths moving and but it doesn't connect. Why? Because we have not bought into it. We don't think this is meaningful, we don't think this is relevant, we don't think this is viable information for me. We think, oh, he's doing this for himself, he gets something out of it because it's his workout, he's just doing his bit. No. Unless there is a need. If there is no hunger, there is no meaning to food. Did it ever happen to you? You just had a big meal and somebody came around and offered you a sandwich or samosa or something, and you were like, oh, food, don't even talk about food, you know? Like, I'm so full. So unless you have that hunger, you have that eagerness, it's not going to happen. Krishna says something else very far out. He's saying that where is that? Here. If the student is actually eager to receive instruction, then the teacher is 10 times more generous in imparting that instruction. 10 times more. So that means you can get 10 times more out of it from your teacher if you're actually interested in learning something. Vidura was very gentle. Because Vidura was very gentle, Krishna was so pleased by his kind-hearted and gentle approach that when he came to Vidura's home to have lunch, after lunch, you know, when you relax after lunch, Krishna put his legs, his feet, on Vidura's lap. And Vidura was massaging him. It's pretty nice, man. That's pretty nice. Would you like to have that opportunity? Yes. You got Krishna's feet on your lap and you can massage them. And he's relaxing and talking casually, you know, after lunch. Why? Because he was very gentle. Now when Brahma instructed his sons, the Kumaras, to create progeny, what did they do? They refused. How can you refuse your authority? That's disobedience, right? But Prabhupada makes the point very strongly that disobedience for a higher cause, for a higher purpose, is permissible. So sometimes we may disrespect a certain law, a minor law, something, you know, you can't put the van here, you can't put books here, you can't distribute books there. These are minor laws. They're man-made laws. Because we're following the law of God. We're following Krishna's order, Krishna's directive. So if you understand Krishna's desire and Krishna's plan, sometimes you can adjust or bend a certain rule. In that same chapter, it also speaks about how service to devotees is more potent than service to Krishna. Can somebody explain that? How is that possible? Isn't service to God the highest thing? Blake, we need a microphone over here. Hello. And don't worry, lunch is going to be down there in 10 minutes, so, you know, time is ticking.
Oftentimes Krishna is trying so hard to serve his devotees, but they won't accept service from Krishna. But if
they won't accept service from Krishna.
Especially as pure devotees.
Yeah.
But if you can give service to the devotees, then Krishna is thinking, oh, that's so nice, you're doing something that I would like to do, but my devotees aren't letting me, so.
Very nice. You know the saying, love me, love my dog? Huh? You want to approach a big person, and you kick his dog or you kick his kid, you think that that person wants to talk to you? Not likely. But if you relate nicely to his dog or to his kid, you have a very good chance of having a word with the master. So Krishna's devotees are very dear to Krishna. If we learn how to serve them, if we learn how to appreciate them, you can capture Krishna's attention by serving Krishna's devotees. Something else that was very interesting, the devotees may sometimes be perplexed. Have you ever been perplexed? Yes. Are there any perplexities in this world? Yeah? It can happen, right? You don't know how to act. You don't know what's Krishna's plan. So the devotee may sometimes be perplexed, but never discouraged. Why is a devotee never discouraged? Because he has full faith in Krishna. That he paves the way for smooth progress of the devotee's duty. Krishna will pave the way. He will get rid of the obstacles. So we have to have that faith.
And another last point that I would like to share with you before I let you go. Krishna knows our motive. Sincerity of purpose. If we have sincerity of purpose, then Krishna will help us in every way. And sincerity, you know what the word sincerity means? Sincerus. It means without wax. Formerly, when the sculptures would make different statues, when there was cracks, they would put wax in it to fill the cracks. So a sincere artist was one who was without wax. He was not using this technique, but he would just do the proper work, and in this way it would be perfect. So Krishna knows our motive. Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. And the people, they will know also. Sometimes you give people a book, and they look at you, they look at the book, they look at you, they look at the book, and sometimes they say no. Have you ever noticed?
Yes.
Because if the two don't match, then it's no-go. Sometimes they want to take the book, and they already have their wallet out, and they take one more look at you, and they say no. Why? Because Krishna tells them, don't take it. He's fake. He's just attached to the result. Now why is Krishna doing this to us? Because Krishna is more interested in drawing out our loving affection and our devotion. Don't worry, that person will get a book. Sometimes people say, you know what they say? Sometimes they say, I want this book. I will buy this book, but not from you. Have you ever heard that? Yes. I want to buy this book, but I will not buy it from you, because I don't like the way how you behave or talk to me, or Prem is nodding his head. He has heard all the excuses. He has heard all the answers. He's in LA, the capital of show business, where everybody's an actor, right? Everybody's an actor. And in the meantime, they're driving taxi and, you know, working as a waiter and doing 3 other jobs. So, but in their minds, they're all actors. Krishna is the supreme artist. You want to see the magic? You like magic? Okay, don't go to the circus, because that's lame. Don't watch TV, because that's really stupid. That's really brain dead, stupid stuff. You want to see the magic? Go on Sankirtan. You will see Krishna's magic. How Krishna is touching people. How Krishna is attracting people. How Krishna is changing people's hearts. You will see people completely change, turn upside down right in front of your eyes. That metamorphosis, and not like becoming a werewolf, you know, or something nasty, but like people really transforming right in front of you. You'll be able to witness that, and you'll be able to appreciate Krishna's magic, Krishna's majestic potency. And another fun thing is when these people themselves become infected, infused with Krishna consciousness, and they start going out and sharing Krishna consciousness and giving it to other people. I was again in San Francisco on Haight-Ashbury, and I met one homeless person, and he had a big long black coat, and his fingernails were beyond description. I'm not going to describe it before lunch, but he was not very well kept, so to speak. And as I was trying to give him a book, because we, you know, give books to everybody, he opened his jacket and he reached into his pocket and he took out a Science of Self-Realization, which was probably from the last Kali Yuga. I mean, it was so well read and underlined and completely, almost fell apart. And he was, with tears in his eyes, he was asking me, what does God want me to do? What does God want me to do? Like, how can I become more humble? He was asking all these questions, you know, like really sincere. And I was like, wow. Wow. You meet other homeless people who come up to you and they say like, my name is such and such Das, I was initiated by Prabhupada, you know, and I kind of lost it, and then they just start crying, and then they give you a handful of coins, and they just walk away crying, you know, and you're like, wow. I mean, Prabhupada walked these streets. Prabhupada was here, walking this town. Prabhupada's been here in Mayapur. You know that hut there at the front gate where it all began? Prabhupada was sitting there, translating his books. And then there was a curtain, and there was Jananivas Prabhu, there was a curtain, and there was some ladies, and they had a hand pump. And that's how it started. That's how it all started. And now we're like, you know, what's my room, and what's the menu, and you know, and this and that, and what kind of phone you got, and you know, all that kind of meaningless stuff. So let us focus on the essence. The essence is receiving Krishna's mercy and sharing Krishna's mercy. We're here only for two reasons. Chant Hare Krishna and share Hare Krishna. What are we doing here? Chant Hare Krishna, share Hare Krishna. What are you doing here? Chant Hare Krishna, share Hare Krishna. What are we doing here? Chant Hare Krishna. Okay. So it's pretty simple. To learn how to communicate this message in a contemporary way, in a relatable way, means tolerance, shravanam. And that's why japa is the ultimate sacrifice. What does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita? Amongst all sacrifices, I'm japa. Why? Because you just have to listen. You just have to listen attentively. And it's an austerity. But it's well worth it. And Krishna will reveal himself through that austerity. So the more we can actually relate to people by listening to them attentively and caring for them, the more we'll be able to capture their hearts and help them to become devotees. We'll get more into it this afternoon. These are just some thoughts that I wanted to share with you, and I'll leave you with a quote of Prabhupada. One thing is that all the students on the party must strictly follow the rules and regulations. Cleanliness is most essential. Rise early, take bath. It is not that because we're traveling we can neglect our routine work and become irregular in our habits. No, we must make every effort to remain regulated and clean. This is the solid basis for our work. And our routine work like chanting, reading books, and deity worship are very nice, then our preaching will have effect. So when our sadhana is very nice, then our preaching has effect. Otherwise we have no potency. That is the secret. As far as studying my books is concerned, I've already given the order. 1 hour in the morning class and 1 hour in the evening. And if there's extra time during the day, it may be used for studying. But we cannot expect everyone to be studious. If someone has a desire to distribute books all day, he may do this. But he must always follow the principles of rising early, chanting 16 rounds, and so on. So, Prabhupada has given us the guidelines. It's up to us to apply them in our own situations. I know some of you are thinking, why is he hammering this point about reading the books? You know, aren't we speaking about book distribution? Is this his pet peeve? You know, like why is he hammering this thing? You know what the topic of the GBC meeting is and the SGGS this year? No? It's reading Prabhupada's books. You know what they did yesterday? They sat together and for 45 minutes they read Chaitanya Charitamrita. And some people afterwards were saying, hey, this is great, you know, we should do this more often. And I was like, what do you guys do normally? I mean, you know, like, what's your regular schedule? I mean...
What section did they do?
What
section?
I wasn't there, Vaisheshika was just telling me, you know, so he was just sharing. I was here, you know, with the group who were having this workshop. But I just thought it was funny. Because sometimes people are like, hey, this is fun, we should do this every day. I'm like, yeah, then why don't you do it? You know, how difficult is it? Now I'm going to pound and hone you on this. Have you been reading today? Yes. How many of you have been reading today? Oh, it's pretty good, you know, we got a majority going. And it's still, we still got a few hours left in the day. Yes.
try to read Prabhupada's books every day. How you do it? You get up early, and before the day gets busy, you just sit down in the Bhagavatam. Did you like these points that I brought you from the appearance of Varaha?
Yes.
So you take a paper and a pen, and you note down the 5 or 7 points that just jump at you. And you just write them down. And then during the day, once, twice, or thrice, you look at them, and you realize, wow, we got something here. Like, this is gold. Did you know that a diamond looks like any other ordinary rock? A raw diamond looks like any other ordinary rock. Unless you are a specialist, a geologist, a knower, a connoisseur, you cannot tell a rock from a raw diamond. Unless you're trained. You can't know who is sincere or is insincere. Sometimes I don't even know my own motive. If you want to know what your motive is, go out on the street, and I have a saying. I show you the book, and I tell you who you are. And by showing you the book, I'll also find out who I am, and where my state of consciousness is at. It's called a philosopher's stone. You can scratch gold, and you can see whether it's actually gold or not. So, this Sankirtan process will enable us to actually attract that positivity in people and in our own selves. So it is the magic formula. If you want to become magicians, follow the supreme magician, Krishna, who is playing the flute and mesmerizing everyone's hearts. And if you're afraid, if you're scared of that, then just run as fast, as far as you can, and never look back. Because if Krishna captures your heart, it may be hard to get it back. Hare Krishna.